Power is a word that is in our common language, but in physics, power means something a little bit different. In physics, the definition of power is the rate at which work is done. We've seen a definition similar to this before, the rate at which something is done, or the rate at which something changes. Anytime we see an equation that has that word rate in it, that means we always have a fraction with time in the denominator. Power is a capital P, and since it's the rate at which work is done, we put work in the numerator here. Another way of saying this would be the rate at which energy changes with respect to time. Of course, when we get a new thing, we have to have new units. And so if we think about the units here based on the equation, we know that work is in joules and time is in seconds. Except we don't really call it a joule per second, we call it something else, and it's something that you should be familiar with, a unit that you've heard before. The unit of power is called a watt. And the symbol for watt is a capital W, not to be confused with the symbol for work. Now this equation gives us the average rate of which work is done, or the average power. But we can also find the instantaneous power. Remember that word instantaneous, when we had velocity or acceleration, meant at a specific point in time. So we can do that by transforming this equation a little bit in the following way. I know that work is equal to force times displacement times the cosine of theta. When I divide that by time, I notice that I have a delta x over delta t. That is otherwise known as the velocity. So another way in which I can find power is the force times the velocity times cosine theta. And again, this could give us instantaneous velocity, or instantaneous power, if we know the velocity at one specific point in time. You could also use this to find the average power if you have the average velocity. Next, we'll do some example problems using both of these two equations so we can figure out when it is best to use one or the other.